Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe. In my last video, I talked about how Donald Trump defeated the rule of law. And part of that was the Supreme Court's immunity decision and how long it took for the Supreme Court to get to that decision. What I will talk about today is the immunity decision itself, briefly, and effectively tell you what it does for Donald Trump as he gets ready to take the place of the 47th president of the United States. So, Trump versus United States essentially said that presidents have absolute immunity from prosecution for acts that are in the core constitutional powers of the president. So, appointments, pardons, uh, signing bills into law. There are, appointing ambassadors. There are many things that are enunciated in the Constitution, fully and faithfully execute the rule of law, to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm laughing at that because, he's a convicted felon. It's, to me, it's confounding. So, those core powers are completely immune. And then there's an outer perimeters peripheral test that John Roberts' court just comes up with. It's nowhere in the Constitution. Immunity, in fact, is nowhere in the Constitution. Presidential immunity is not in the Constitution. So, but there is a speech or debate clause immunity, which is for Congress people, to guard them against an overreaching executive. Well, I think that the judiciary has drawn the idea of immunity from speech or debate clause because it is all about the conduct, specific conduct. And if you look at the dicta, it's awfully similar to the speech or debate clause dicta in the cases that have used speech or debate clause. Now, that's the only reference of immunity in the Constitution. But Chief Justice John Roberts comes up with this three-part test of the core constitutional powers and then the peripheral constitutional powers, like the outer perimeters of the presidency. Now, that could include ordering the military to have a military operation, to be able to quail civil protest. It could be ordering SEAL Team 6 to go out and kill a political opponent, and something to do with, say, if you have any interaction with any of your executive department officials about hiring, firing, what investigations they could do, what they don't, what regulations the laws that they follow, and whether they agree with Donald Trump or not. All these decisions are now immune. Like if you go to the core, there's the appointments, and then you ask what happens with bribes. Well, we don't know what happens with bribes because honestly, the Supreme Court's reasoning on the fact that this doesn't uh, encourage other people to buy their way to ingratiate the president, and the Federalist Papers warned about that happening. But in John Roberts' case in Trump the United States, there's this presumption of immunity for that peripheral outer perimeters of the president's job. So now with those, and then there's a third category where it's private acts that say that Donald Trump took as an office seeker or a candidate. That is the case in Donald Trump's criminal conspiracy case in DC, which is going to be probably a decline to prosecute with a final report by Jack Smith, which I hope Merrick Garland publishes to the public. Other than that, so if you have Donald Trump now going into, there are a lot of pundits who are saying that we can't just say that Donald Trump is in a position of strength going in. We have to resist. I agree on the part that we have to resist, but what I don't agree with is us not accepting the fact that Donald Trump is going to be in a position of enormous power, more power than any president has had. I mean, Joe Biden has the same powers based on Trump, the United States, but Joe Biden is not somebody who is prone to abusing his power. Whereas we know that Donald Trump is all about abusing his power, starting with executive orders of bans, deportations, Muslim bans, going after the various energy policies that we have, then ramping up drilling for oil and gas. There's a whole lot of things that would otherwise be looked at as something that could be impeachable conduct, something that could be defrauding the American people. For all of that stuff, the only avenue left now is impeachment. And impeachment is nearly impossible because we now have a 53-seat majority in the Senate of Republicans. As I came on here to speak to y'all, Ruben Gallego won the Arizona senatorial seat. So that gives Democrats 47. So there's a majority in the Senate. No one's going to convict. And we still don't know what the calculation is with the House. The way that it's looking closer to that Mike Johnson will retain power in the House as Speaker. And if that happens, we will have a single party government with a majority conservative Supreme Court, a conservative House, and a conservative Senate, and Donald Trump as the ultra conservative far right president. That's a one party rule. I don't know. I'm not right now. Republicans have like 211 seats and Democrats have like 200 or something like that. They have to get to that 218 mark. So that's still in the not yet decided phase, but it's leaning towards being GOP. And if that happens, it'll be a one single party government, and so they'll be able to get their legislations out, and they'll be able to argue their decisions if they are challenged in court, and there'll be a lot of litigation, a lot of resistance happening to any of the policies that Donald Trump just signs out in his executive orders, these mass deportations being one of them. I'm sure the activist groups and political advocacy groups are not going to just stop caring for the people who need it, and people who are legally in the country, because you have Stephen Miller now filling Donald Trump's ear about denaturalization, which would take away citizenship, U.S. citizenship, from people like me who weren't born there, but we got our citizenship by way of having been there for so long, and because of my family, half of which lives in the United States. So for people like me, denaturalization is kind of like a fire alarm, and I want to talk about that later. But what I'm saying is all of these acts are completely immune from any type of criminal prosecution that may happen based on Trump v. United States. Remember, before that, there was no Supreme Court opinion declaring presidential immunity, and nor is presidential immunity anywhere in the Constitution. So we have to keep that in mind, and we have to understand and accept that we have an extremely powerful Donald Trump who is prone to abusing his powers with virtual immunity to do anything he wants if he can give an outer perimeter rationale that the prosecution would then have to rebut after he leaves office. And of course, he's completely now scot-free of the two criminal federal cases that are against him of defrauding the United States, obstructing justice, depriving us of our rights. And then on the other side, you have the stealing of the or withholding of classified information and skip information being laid out in bathrooms and dance halls. So we are entering a period of uncertainty and darkness. And I think there will be resistance, but our resistance will not be able to hit the mark that we need to unless we accept that Donald Trump is in a position of extreme strength. So we take up cases to look at the merits of the case that are so unassailable that the Supreme Court would have no choice but to rule for the individual that is against Donald Trump's administration on certain regulations, on executive orders to deport. So we have to accept that he's in a position of strength. We have to accept that it is done by judicial activism and it's nowhere in the Constitution. And we have to work towards judicial reform. We need to work towards ethical reforms in the judiciary. I believe there are going to be some major changes in the judiciary because now that Donald Trump is in office, there's a chance that about 2 to 3 Supreme Court justices will be appointed by him. So he will have totally had a total of 7 or 6 appointments. If Sotomayor also retires during Donald Trump's presidency, then he'll have 7. But if Sotomayor retires now, there's a chance that Biden could push it through a majority blue Senate before January. There's a possibility there. So we'll have to see what happens. But all in all, I wanted to talk about this immunity thing and how much above the law it puts Donald Trump. Like I said, yes, in my last talk, we can no longer say that nobody is above the rule of law. And that is a sad, sad story for Americans. And we have to accept that before we go on to fighting. We have to accept what we understood wrong. We have to accept where we went wrong. We have to accept of what truths do we want to present to the American people. And I talked about that in a previous episode, that we have to see what the truth is, what the greater truth is for the American people, not the greater truth from a global macro perspective. But when Americans are voting, it's important to pay attention to what the bigger truths are of the American people. And in order for us to learn that and move forward, we have to take these steps of accepting the defeats that we have had and understanding the defeats and what playing field we are stepping into as we move into a second Trump presidency. With that, thank you so much for being here. Please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.